Okay, enough of that. Hello, this is Thunderbob with a review of the AtGames Legends Ultimate Arcade. I've actually owned this for around 6 months, but I thought it was finally time to put a review together and share what I really enjoy about this arcade. To get it out of the way, this is not a sponsored video. I paid for my unit, received no compensation. To give a little background, I've always had a fascination with the arcade. One of my earliest memories is going to play mini golf with my dad and playing Galaga with him in the built-in arcade. Remember, we'd go to the mall and my mom would slip me $5 and drop me off at the arcade while she went shopping. As a child of the late 80s, early 90s, I love all kinds of arcade games. Beat 'em ups, shoot 'em ups, fighting games, puzzle games. The Legends Ultimate Arcade has a good collection of all of these. Unlike a lot of arcades out there that have just a handful of games, this thing comes packed with 350 games. You can see them scrolling by. Mixture of arcade and console games from the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Be nice if there were more exclusive arcade games, but there's some nice console editions here as well. A few classics like Centipede, Burger Time, Asteroids, Tetris, mixed in with console games like The Lion King, Aladdin, the Star Wars trilogy. A lot of games I was unfamiliar with, but I ended up enjoying a whole lot. Here's just a couple of picks of my favorite, starting with Fix-It Felix Jr. While this may look like an old school game, it's actually based on the movie and not the other way around. This is one my 3-year-old daughter actually enjoys playing. This game does support the online leaderboard, which was added in a firmware update several months ago, one of a growing list of games. It was a really fun game to compete against other people globally. While it plays like a lot of older classic arcade games like Donkey Kong or Popeye, I really do enjoy it. It's a different take on that genre, and I think you'll enjoy it. The next game is something called Magical Drop 3. This is sort of like Tetris, except instead of blocks coming down, there are multicolored balls. You collect these balls and try to match them up. You'll see. This is another game that supports the online leaderboard. It's quite competitive. There's a lot of people out there playing this game. Another great addition. And that brings us to our beat 'em up game on the list. This is Night Slashers from Data East. This is a really cool beat 'em up game. You fight a lot of supernatural creatures. This is the only beat 'em up game I can think of where you fight zombies, vampires, Frankenstein, the Grim Reaper. Just really cool theming on the game. This is probably my favorite of the built-in games, which is saying a lot because there are some cool games in that list. And that brings us to our console game on the list from the built-in games. This is Zombies Ate My Neighbors. This is a Super Nintendo game, if I remember correctly. I really enjoyed this. I owned this growing up. There's something like 50 levels with all kinds of crazy supernatural enemies. Zombies and giant babies and mutants. Man, a lot. Basically, you use squirt guns and fire extinguishers, Coke cans to kill these zombies, save all the survivors. Of the console editions, this is one of my favorites. It's a really good game. You should give it a try. So up front, I'll say the hardware on this unit is somewhat limited. You're not going to play any 3D games natively. You're not going to play anything newer than maybe the year 2000 for 2D games. But there are other ways to play games on this machine. And one of them is ArcadeNet. This is a streaming service offered by AtGames where you can basically stream games off of their server directly to your system. You can even play these games with other people. Here's Metal Slug, which is a great game being played through ArcadeNet. Another way to play games on this is by loading them onto a USB drive. They'll be accessible through this add-ons menu. Now you can see I've broken these up by category. That's another feature they've added through a firmware update. Here are some of my beat 'em up games. You can see there are 10 games per page, and I have, 14 pages here. You can do the math. A lot of games. Here are some of the classic games, some of my console games. I don't have a lot of console games. I really prefer playing arcade games on this machine. Fighting games. I mean, right there's 90 fighting games. You can also play light gun games. I unfortunately don't have a light gun yet. I might buy one, but I'm playing these with the trackball, and it's definitely playable, still a lot of fun. Shoot 'em ups. This is maybe my favorite genre to play on this machine. You can see I have quite a few of these. Well, let's get right into playing some. The first game I'm going to show you is Samurai Shodown 5. This is running as an add-on natively on the hardware. Really fun game, runs very smoothly. Pretty much any of the Neo Geo based arcade or console games run pretty flawlessly. I'm not particularly good at this, but I do enjoy it. And right into Mortal Kombat 3, a great game. I dumped a lot of quarters into this back in the day. On to my first light gun game, Aliens 3. They have added through patches the ability to use an aim track light gun for these games. I'm on the fence about buying one. I probably will eventually. There's a couple other options out there that are not released yet but are under development that I'm really interested in. So we'll see. This is being played by the trackpad, which works better than you might think. It's actually maybe a little too easy with the trackpad, actually. You can really aim pretty precisely and line up shots. And again, this game is running natively. Really, no issues that I've run into on this one. Now, just to show you a couple of things here. You just press the menu button, and you can adjust things like the screen size, widescreen, pixel perfect, fill, fit. Now here is the wide, which a lot of people, they first turn on the game and they see these bars on the side and they think, let's go with wide. Well, in most games it ends up stretching it out. If you can live with that, great. I usually do fit or fill, depending on the game. I think it retains the aspect ratio while still giving you a little bit more screen space. Moving right along to another great fighting game, Street Fighter 3 Third Strike. And Ryu, of course. Now, one thing to mention for these add-on games, you can't just drop ROMs, name files, things like that directly onto the USB. You do need to convert them to something called a UCE file first. There are guides online. There are also some groups that put together these and have online repositories. There's some Facebook groups, some Reddit groups I found. You can find some of these on archive.org if you search for it. The community is really great. Like, they put together literally thousands of playable games. Maybe almost the entire library of arcade games that can play in this thing have already been converted. As you can see, I've got about 1,100 games on here, and I've done maybe 50 of those myself. You can add box art, bezel art, all of that directly in this file, and that's how the bezels work. Here's another cool feature. While you can get into the main controls, they're a little unwieldy at times, you can actually come right in here and remap any of the controls if you have issues. I'm going to cycle quickly through here a couple of my favorite beat-em-up games. This is, of course, The Simpsons, a quintessential beat-em-up game. Now, a lot of these games you can configure to actually play with 4 players by using controllers. Some of them you have to go into the MAME settings, it's a little difficult. You probably want to do it once for the games you really enjoy. Moving along to probably my favorite beat-em-up game, Turtles in Time. I actually played this first on the Super Nintendo as a child. I played it maybe once in the arcades, the big 4-player version, but this is a great game. Great soundtrack, great gameplay. This really led the way for a lot of other games. Now you can see I turned on the scan line here. It doesn't come over great in this video. Right now this is actually being streamed directly from the Legends Ultimate to YouTube. So the quality is a little lower. It actually looks pretty good directly.
Pizza time.
Moving right along to X-Men, another great beat 'em up. They actually used to have one of those big 6-player cabinets at the movie theater near me, and I have a lot of great memories of this game. Another way you can play games on this machine is using something known as the BYOG. You basically connect to a virtual machine run by AtGames. You can install games. You're basically running a desktop client. You can install Steam. You can install software. I don't have a lot of experience with this. I primarily use my own computer because I have a really nice system and it's just feet away from my arcade unit. So next I'm going to show connecting to my own computer using the ArcadeNet link software. This is actually running a piece of software called CoinOps. It's a front-end piece of software. It's got a ton of different systems in here, from Atari, Jaguar, Coelco, old school computer games, Dreamcast, Sega Saturn, Game Boy, GameCube, Wii, arcade, modern PC games, Neo Geo. There's literally every system available for this thing. You can download the initial client. There's a Discord channel I would look for, and then there are a ton of packs you can download to increase the number of systems, games, things like that available. All told, my client is around 800 gigabytes on an external hard drive, and I don't have all the packs. There's way more I could download. Just showing you here some of the arcade games. You can see in the bottom right corner there, I have about 1,400 arcade games, all with custom bezels, custom artwork. You can see the really nice user interface for cycling through games here. One other thing to think about is the actual hardware built into the machine is limited. Like I said before, you're not going to play any 3D games, but by connecting to your computer, you can play anything that computer would be able to play. For example, Area 51. Now again, I don't have light guns, so I am playing this using my trackball, which is perfectly playable.
Reload.
To reload, you do shoot off the screen. It takes a little getting used to the trackball. There are just thousands of games here. I could probably take hours and hours showing my favorite games. I'm just gonna cycle through a few that are not possible to play on the hardware itself, just to give you some examples. And here is another classic fighting game, Tekken 3. And of course, I'm running this off of my computer, streaming it to the AtGames Legends. No lag, no graphical artifacts, playing with the joystick, the buttons, flawlessly. Most of the arcade games work with very little configuration. A lot of the other console games you're gonna have to fiddle with or find configuration files for, but mostly I bought this to play arcade games. If I want to play Mario Kart, I'm gonna play it on my television. Of course, here is Time Crisis, another classic light gun game. I'm really considering buying an aim track gun. I've seen some really cool videos. I'm definitely interested in checking it out. It's a high price tag, but if it works as well as a regular, arcade light gun, I don't think there's a price I would not be willing to pay.
course by wheel and step on gas pedal.
Here is a pretty awesome racing game. I've played this in the arcade. You actually sit in a car, it moves around and stuff. It's not quite as immersive. And I'm also playing, with a spinner. Not the easiest to play. There are some great community members who've printed actual wheels that connect to these spinners. I'm kind of interested in checking that out. As you can see, it's not the easiest to play with the spinner. You can try with the joystick or with the trackball, but the spinner is, I think, the best. So many great games here. And while I haven't tested all 1400, I have yet to find a game here that doesn't work. Pretty much every genre is represented. Sports games, puzzle games, fighting games, beat 'em ups, shoot 'em ups. Anything you want to play, you're probably going to find it here. Soul Calibur. This is maybe my favorite fighting game series. And this is the original, well, unless you count Soul Edge. Kilik, of course, is my favorite. So I mentioned that you can play Steam games and other games through the arcade link also. I wanted to just show the difference between Soul Calibur 1 and the most recent chapter.
Soul Calibur 6.
Battle 2. Fight. Yeah. Don't overdo it.
Now again, this is running on my computer. It's streaming to my AtGames Legends Ultimate. Works flawlessly, no lag. It's running over my network beautifully. This feels like an arcade perfect port. So basically, if you think about it, I have a Soul Calibur 6 arcade in my house. I've also been able to play Street Fighter 5, Dragon Ball Z Fighters, Tekken 7, Mortal Kombat 11. I have, an arcade cabinet in my house for all of those games. It's amazing. Without modding or even hooking up to a computer, you can play thousands of games. No modding required. You put a USB drive with UCEs on them, those games are available. So you have 350 built-in games. You've got streaming games from ArcadeNet. You've got your add-ons. You can stream from your own computer. Now, there are other cabinets out there. I've seen some with much higher price tags that are amazing. But in this price range, the sub $600, where you're comparing this to something like an arcade 1-up, which I do like. Those are great reproduction units. They look great. But this is in a different ballpark, in my opinion. Now, to play devil's advocate, there are a few issues. There have been some quality control problems. People have purchased this and it's become damaged. Things are broken. Mine was not. I can't really speak to those issues. It does seem like AtGames is responsive, and I hope they fix those issues, and I hope those people get a working unit. The only issue I did have is I needed to reapply the grease on my left joystick, which was not difficult. I actually also replaced the ball tops with bat tops at the same time, as you can see, and getting used to it, but I think I like them better. All this hardware is pretty easily replaceable. You can find some guides online. But these are Sanwa clones, and I think the quality is pretty good. Give it a try. I don't know if you'll necessarily want to replace them. My other complaint is, well, it's nice that we get weekly updates. Personally, I would be fine if they took longer, if there were fewer bugs. I'm not saying there are bugs during every firmware update, but there are enough that I wish they took a little longer in testing. But I do love the features they've added. We'll go through those next. So they've released a ton of patches. Things like custom attract screens. Currently I have more than 1,000 attract screens saved on my USB drive that randomly get shuffled. It's a really cool feature, amazing addition to the system. They added custom backgrounds, custom background audio. If you want to sound like you're in an arcade and add arcade background sounds, go for it. Things like a clock, it seems really simple, but it's a nice addition. The high score leaderboards were added post-release. Really, really fun feature. Glad it's there. It really helps bring the community together. Light gun support, using aim track guns, controller mirroring. You can actually mirror the controls. So, do you want to use the right side as player 1 or the left side? Do you want to use the left stick with the right buttons? It's all pretty easy to set up. There's Bluetooth. Either connect a controller to your system and control it through Bluetooth, or you can connect something like a RetroPie through HDMI or a computer through HDMI and then use Bluetooth for the controls. Personally, I find the Arcade Link sufficient. I don't mess with that. I've tried it. It was a little harder to configure than just connecting to Arcade Link, which seems to just work. Another nice feature they added is built-in streaming to Twitch, YouTube, Facebook. A lot of the footage you're seeing I streamed to YouTube and then downloaded from YouTube. Great feature, really cool feature. Parental controls, support for folders. You saw how all my games were broken up by genre. All that stuff was added after release. I expect that to continue. It seems like they're trying to perfect this thing. They're sticking with it. They've done a great job for the most part. The community's been really amazing at figuring these things out, getting games running. I really love this thing. If you're on the fence about it, personally, I've got no regrets. I really, really enjoy this thing. Like I said at the beginning, this brings me back to my childhood, playing at the arcade with friends. My dad taking me out to the arcade. It was a childhood dream to have an arcade in my house, just one game. And now I have access to thousands, practically every arcade game ever. I would highly recommend it. And thank you everyone for watching. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe. While this channel is old, I'm really relatively new at streaming. This was mostly just for friends, and now I'm trying to expand and, make higher quality content. But I'm eager for feedback. If you have any advice, suggestions, anything you like, you didn't like, please leave a comment below. Please subscribe, let me know what you think. Thank you.